There is a grave in southern Greece that contained more gold than any European burial site discovered before or since. Gold death masks pressed against the faces of kings, gold cups, gold sword hilts, gold diadems, rings, ornaments, vessels, an almost obscene concentration of wealth sealed into the earth around 1550 BCE and left there for 3,000 years until a self-taught archaeologist with a copy of Homer and an unshakable belief that myth was history drove a shovel into the ground and proved that he was right. In this video, I use modern AI tools to bring ancient reconstructions, archaeological maps, and Bronze Age palace sites to life, moving through these places, shifting angles, imagining what it felt like to stand inside a world that has no living descendants and left no continuous cultural memory. The Mycenaeans did not pass their civilization forward intact. It ended, completely, in one of the most total collapses in recorded human history. What we know about them, we have had to piece back together from ruins, from clay tablets, from graves, and from myths that preserved garbled memories of a world their tellers no longer understood. The goal is to step into that world before it ended. If you stay until the end, we'll look at what remains today, and the answer is more than you'd expect from a civilization that collapsed 3,000 years ago. Before we enter any Mycenaean palace, it helps to understand that the name itself is slightly misleading. The Mycenaeans were not one unified state. They were a collection of palace kingdoms, Mycenae, Tiryns, Pylos, Thebes, Orchomenos, Athens, each controlling its own territory, each governed by a king called a wonax, each running its own economy through a bureaucratic system of extraordinary complexity. What made them Mycenaean was shared material culture, the same pottery styles, the same palace architecture, the same writing system, the same weapons, the same prestige goods moving between them through trade and diplomacy. Think of it less as a nation and more as a civilization, a set of shared practices and forms that different polities participated in without being politically unified. By 1400 BCE, that shared civilization stretched from mainland Greece to Crete, to Cyprus, to the Aegean Islands, and had trading connections reaching Egypt, the Levant, Anatolia, and Italy. It was a Bronze Age Mediterranean world, and the Mycenaeans were near its center. This reconstruction shows the Lion Gate at Mycenae, the main entrance to the Citadel and one of the most recognizable monuments from the ancient world. Two lions, or possibly lionesses, carved in relief, flank a central column above the massive stone lintel. The gate dates to around 1250 BCE. The figures above it are the oldest monumental sculpture surviving in Europe. What strikes you standing before this, even in reconstruction, is the weight of everything. The stones used to build Mycenaean citadels were so large that later Greeks, encountering these ruins and unable to imagine how human beings had moved such blocks, concluded that the Cyclopes must have built them. The term Cyclopean masonry, which archaeologists still use today for this style of construction, preserves that confusion across 3,000 years. The walls of Mycenae are not the work of giants. They are the work of an organized state with coercive labor power and sophisticated engineering. But they are large enough that the mistake is understandable. This image shows the interior of the Treasury of Atreus, also known as the tomb of Agamemnon. Though Agamemnon is a mythological figure, and the tomb predates any historical king by centuries. It is a tholos tomb, a beehive-shaped burial chamber carved into a hillside and approached through a long stone corridor. The dome rises to nearly 50 feet. It was constructed around 1250 BCE and remained the largest dome in the world for over 1,000 years, until the Romans built the Pantheon. Imagine entering this space freshly built, the stone still sharp, the dromos corridor still lined with decorated half columns, the bronze decorations still attached to the facade. A king is being interred here, surrounded by grave goods that will not be seen again for millennia. The door closes, the hillside swallows it, and for 3,000 years it stays closed. When travelers began visiting the site in the 18th and 19th centuries, they had no idea what they were looking at. The Treasury of Atreus was already old when Rome was young. This scene shows the palace of Nestor at Pylos, and it is the site that has told us more about how Mycenaean civilization actually functioned than almost anywhere else, because Pylos was burned suddenly and completely around 1180 BCE, and in that burning, thousands of clay tablets baked hard and survived. Those tablets, written in Linear B script, are administrative records, lists of goods in storage, rations distributed to workers, land allocations, lists of rowers assembled for fleet service, inventories of bronze weapons and temple offerings. They are not literature, they are not history, they are paperwork, and that paperwork is invaluable. What it reveals is a palace economy of striking sophistication. The one-axe at the top, below him a series of officials managing specific economic functions, below them a workforce of specialists, bronzesmiths, textile workers, shipbuilders, perfume makers, slaves, all tracked, all rationed, all integrated into a redistributive system where the palace collected surplus and allocated it back out. This was not a simple chieftain with followers. This was a bureaucratic state with specialists dedicated to record keeping, running an economy that coordinated labor across a substantial territory. The last tablets from Pylos include records of rowers being assembled and watchers being posted on the coast. They look to modernize, exactly like the records of a palace administration that knew something bad was coming and was trying to respond to it. This image shows what the Linear B tablets record but don't explain, the world the Mycenaeans participated in. The Uluburun shipwreck, discovered off the coast of Turkey and dated to around 1300 BCE, carried a cargo that reads like a catalogue of the Bronze Age Mediterranean: copper ingots from Cyprus, tin ingots from sources still debated, ebony from Egypt, ivory from Syria, glass ingots of a type made only in Egypt, Canaanite jars filled with resin, Cypriot pottery, Mycenaean pottery, a scarab bearing the name of Nefertiti. The ship itself was probably Canaanite. Its cargo was everybody's. This is the world the Mycenaeans operated in. They were not isolated. They were participants in an interconnected Bronze Age economy stretching from Britain to Mesopotamia, buying and selling and raiding and diplomating across distances that should, by every intuitive measure, have been insurmountable. They managed them through ships and through the kind of institutionalized trust that makes long-distance trade possible when you can't call ahead. This reconstruction shows Mycenae at its height, around 1300 BCE. The citadel on its rocky hill, the palace at the summit, the grave circles below, the lower towns spreading out around the base of the hill. It was a genuine urban environment. Tens of thousands of people living in the shadow of the palace, their labor organized by its administration, their goods flowing through its redistribution system. From the summit, on a clear day, you could see the sea. Mycenae is not coastal. It sits inland in the Argolid plain, but it is close enough to multiple ports that sea access was practical. The kingdom controlled routes between the Corinthian Gulf and the Saronic Gulf, between the Aegean and the Western Mediterranean. That geographic position, commanding inland routes between coastlines, was not accidental. Cities do not rise where they rise by accident. Then, between approximately 1200 and 1150 BCE, it ended. Not one palace, but all of them, across the entire eastern Mediterranean within a generation. Mycenae burned, Tiryns burned, Pylos burned, and was not rebuilt. The palace at Ugarit on the Syrian coast burned, the Hittite Empire collapsed, Egypt survived but contracted sharply. Cyprus was destroyed and partially abandoned. Trade networks that had sustained interconnected civilizations for centuries dissolved almost simultaneously. What caused this is one of the great unsolved questions of ancient history. The ancient Egyptians recorded attacks by groups they called the Sea Peoples, a confederation of displaced and migrating groups from various origins who struck coastal cities across the eastern Mediterranean. There is evidence of this in the archaeology: destruction layers, burned palaces, disrupted trade, but the Sea Peoples alone don't fully explain the collapse. Climate evidence suggests a prolonged drought across the region in exactly this period. There is evidence of internal political stress in several palace economies before the attacks came. There may have been earthquakes. There may have been disease. The current scholarly consensus tends towards systems collapse, a term borrowed from complexity theory to describe how interconnected systems can fail catastrophically when multiple stresses arrive simultaneously. The Bronze Age Mediterranean was highly integrated and highly specialized. That integration was its strength in stable times and its fatal vulnerability in unstable ones. When the network failed, the individual nodes that depended on the network could not sustain themselves independently. The population of Greece dropped by as much as 75% over the following century. Writing disappeared. Long-distance trade disappeared. Monumental architecture disappeared. The palace economies that had organized everything were simply gone, and there was nothing to replace them. What followed is called the Greek Dark Ages, and it lasted roughly 400 years. The myths preserved the memory, distorted almost beyond recognition, but still pointing at something real. The heroes of the Iliad, Agamemnon, Achilles, Odysseus, Ajax, are figures from a dimly remembered world of kings and palaces and great bronze-armed armies, preserved in oral poetry across centuries of illiteracy and fragmentation. When the Greeks of the classical period heard these stories, they understood them as ancient and heroic, from a time when men were greater than they were now. They did not understand that they were hearing garbled recollections of an actual Bronze Age civilization that their own culture had descended from. It took archaeology to make that connection. Heinrich Schliemann, excavating at Mycenae in 1876, uncovering those shaft graves full of gold, telegraphed the Greek king that he had gazed upon the face of Agamemnon. He was wrong about the specific identity. He was right that he had found a civilization the myths had been trying to remember. Now I want to bring you to the present. The Lion Gate at Mycenae still stands. The massive lintel is still in place. The lions above it are still there, missing their heads, which were probably inlaid in a different material and lost long ago. But present, still flanking that central column after 3,000 years. You can walk through the gate. You can walk up to the palace ruins on the summit. You can stand where the Megaron, the great throne room, would have been, and look out over the Argolid plain exactly as the Wonax would have looked. The Treasury of Atreus is open. You walk down the dromos and enter the dome and look up into 50 feet of corbelled stone. The acoustic properties of the space are extraordinary. Sound behaves differently in there, and you notice it immediately. That was probably deliberate. Pylos is excavated and accessible. The throne room floor is preserved under a protective roof, the painted plaster still showing traces of the decoration it once had. The tablets from Pylos are in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. That museum is one of the great repositories of the ancient world. The gold masks from Shaft Grave 5, the ones Schliemann claimed belonged to Agamemnon, are there behind glass. They are smaller than you expect. The faces pressed into the gold are specific and individual, not generic representations of kingship, but something that looks like portraiture, like someone who actually sat for this, whose actual features were pressed into this metal. The civilization that wore these masks ended in catastrophe and left no continuous descendants who remembered what it was, but it left the masks, the walls, the tombs, the tablets, the myths, and from all of that, slowly, across 2 centuries of archaeology, a picture has assembled itself. Not complete, not certain, but real. Thanks for being here. If you have thoughts or places you want to see reconstructed next, leave them in the comments. Let's keep going. This video is brought to you by the Paladin Learn History app. Scan the QR code to learn more history.